Oh, maybe that's because I didn't have. Chair Edge, we are on the air. Are you, can you hear me? Yes, I think you can.
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome you to the regular meeting of the Milwaukee Planning Commission. Agendas and additional copies of staff reports are available on the city website at www.milwaukeeoregon.gov. You may locate them by navigating to the community calendar where tonight's meeting page is posted. If you have not reviewed the agenda, please do so. It contains important information about the process. The City of Milwaukee respectfully acknowledges that our community is located on the ancestral homeland of the Clackamas people. In 1855, the surviving members of the Clackamas signed the Willamette Valley Treaty, also known as the Kalapuya, etc. Treaty, with the federal government in good faith. We offer our respect and gratitude to the indigenous people of this land. I ask everyone for just a moment of silence to please remember the indigenous people of this area. Thank you. There are no commission minutes for consideration this evening, so we will move on to, are there any informational items from staff?
Hello. The only thing that I would bring up is just for you all and for the public, if anyone is listening in, as you all are aware, probably, if you haven't been to the new website, we have a new website. But it turns out when we transferred everything, a lot of things got broken. And so we are fast and furiously trying to get them fixed. So if there's something that you're looking for that you can't find.
Not on tonight's agenda. Do we have any audience members virtually or in person?
We do not.
Okay, then I will cruise past this section. We'll just get straight into our work session. So this work session item is an overview of the Transportation System Plan's project prioritization. Staff and our consultant will present the information for discussion. I'm not sure who's taking the lead on this one, but you may begin.
Great, thank you, Chair Edge. And also, I just wanted to say a quick hello to Camilo, who's been on our team since you started in the city. Gosh, how long has it been, Camilo?
9 months.
9 months, it's been that long. Okay, so Camilo and Jen Garbley here, you know, the city engineer. You're up here. And then Amy Griffith has joined us online via Zoom. She's going to be here for the first part of the meeting. And then Matt Hugart, who's also on the consultant team, is going to join us. And then Amy's going to go away. So they're kind of tag teaming it. They're based on some other commitments. And so that's, I think, everybody who's in the room for now. And everybody knows everybody else, I think. Okay. And with that, okay, I guess I'll kick this thing off. What have we got? All right, let's see. So tonight we're going to go through the prioritization process. We're going to look at the tier 1 project list. And also, just so you all know, the packet that was in front of you is the most updated one based on feedback that we got from the technical committee and the advisory committee. So this is the most up to date. So if anybody's looking at their packet online, that packet isn't the correct packet, but we've got the projects here in the room. And then we're going to talk about we're going to just go through the priority projects and see if anything needs to move around based on what planning commissioners think about how everything's playing out. And then we will go over the next step. And if there's public comment, we'll have that. Okay. Okay, so we did a lot in between, I think, the last time that we saw you. We did a lot of engagement efforts over the summer, starting in May. We went to the Noche Latina event in May with our equity steering committee our equity coordinator. We went to the farmers market in June, talked to people. We had a public workshop in June, on June 18th at the Letting Library. We had about 50 plus people show up for that, which was really awesome. We also did an Engage Milwaukee component of that and got information from folks that way. Then we also had 3 focus group meetings. One was with the Milwaukee Community Center and folks from the Wichita Center. So we combined that. And these focus groups we're trying to get at our underserved populations and going out to folks. We had a meeting with Hillside Manor residents, and then also a BIPOC and Spanish speaking meeting in the morning with our equity coordinator there as well. And so we also, we offered a stipend and we also had a meal. So we're just trying to get people and get some folks that we don't normally hear at the table. And then we also went and talked to the Equity Steering Committee in July and got some feedback at that point. So as you can see, we had this big project list and we went out and we tried to talk to a bunch of different people about the projects to make sure that we had all of the projects and to try to get an understanding of what they prioritized. So we kind of gave them these little cards to fill out that said, do you prioritize pedestrian or biking or roads, that kind of thing? And is there any specific project that you want to bring to highlight to us? So we collected all of that information and you'll see how that went into some of the prioritization work. And that's about wrapping that up. Yeah. Okay. What's the next slide? All right. So at this point, I will hand it over to Amy.
Great. Thank you, Laura. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. So this figure is available on ODOT's website, and it visually illustrates how this TSP is going to move in the direction of following the new CFEC requirements for getting to constrained and an unconstrained, financially constrained and a financially unconstrained project list. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that means, but basically according to ODOT's or the state's requirements for TSPs, we do a financial forecast early in the project, and we did this based on historical funding information and identified that over the next 20 years, there's a forecast of $22 million available for capital projects. And then we looked at this and we're allowed to say, to create a constrained project list that includes 125% of that projected available funding. So later on, we'll talk a little bit about what's ending up in a constrained and an unconstrained project list, but really what that means is it within the $27.5 million that's allowed to be in the list, or is it beyond that and then it's considered to be in an unconstrained list? Just framing early on, we're going through this process and we'll describe kind of the data-driven approach we had to prioritizing projects and some of the adjustments that are being incorporated based on the advisory committee and technical committee feedback. And then we'll be updating again based on all of your all feedback to kind of reflect the priorities that go beyond what can be done in a data-driven approach. And Laura kind of just has a good way of describing this as well, but we just want to note that we've separated the projects into 4 tiers: tier 1 constrained, tier 1 unconstrained, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4, tier 2 and tier 3, sorry. Projects can be done out of the order of those tiers. This is just kind of our best approach at the time of developing the TSP, of developing a prioritized list. But you have to recognize that as other projects occur, it can make more sense to put projects together. So if you have a project on 29th that's happening to repave the roadway, for example, or to change some of the stormwater, you would then want to bring up any other related projects in the TSP. So just wanting to note that as we're looking through this list, it's good to have the general projects in the buckets that feel appropriate, but there is some flexibility at the time of implementation. It doesn't have to actually follow completely within the tier approach. Laura, do you have anything to add to that before I talk a little bit about the criteria?
No, I think that's really good, Amy. It's just trying to clarify that if the project is in the TSP, then there's going to be an opportunity for it possibly to happen outside of the order that it's in, right? So it's just like Amy said, if Public Works is doing a project and they're ripping up the street for a reason, right, to put in utilities or stormwater or any other really project, Public Works project, then they would look at the TSP and say, oh, well, this street is, in tier 3 in the unconstrained list, but we're gonna do those improvements now as much as that as we can with the budget that allows, because we're already doing the project. So even though you have number one, where you think that you're gonna get them, they're the highest ranked, it doesn't mean that that it's gonna go in that order by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of factors that play into it. So when you're developing a CIP, you look at all of the other projects that are going on. We do CIPs, capital improvement projects, for 2 years at a time. And so you might have a grind and pave program, like Jen is going to be looking at which roads are going to get treatments over the next 5 years. And so whatever those roads are, then we will go in and say, oh, which projects in the TSP can maybe rise up and get some funding through that process as well. And it won't always be the full project that's identified in the TSP, but you might be able to get incremental improvements just based on the funding that's available for other projects. So I just basically said what you said, Amy, so I hope that clarified it, or didn't, I'm not really sure. So, okay. All right, Amy, go ahead.
So this slide is showing the evaluation criteria that we used to prioritize projects and score the projects that we had, which was there's about 200 projects in the TSP that were scored according to these criteria. And these titles are really the goal statements that were developed based on input from the public, from the committees that we brought to you all and to council and to various staff. And these goals by design do align very naturally with the CFAC requirements. So safety, mobility, active transportation choices, equitable transportation, climate, all of these really align very well with CFAC, which is great for the prioritization process. And so each criteria listed here had between 1 and 3 more detailed descriptions of how we evaluated it and so there's about up to 16 points that a project could score according to these criteria. And so that's going to be reflected in how we describe the prioritization process on the next slide. So this table is very text heavy. We know just really talks through kind of the iterative, data-driven way that we looked at parsing things out into the tier 1 financially constrained, as well as the tier 1, 2, and 3 financially unconstrained project lists. And so what ended up in the tier 1 constrained list is really just those projects that score the top 95th percentile of the criteria based on all projects, which means it really had to hit about 15 points for the criteria to be included in the tier 1. And then we did add in some projects that we heard from city staff that are higher priority, and remove projects that are considered lower priority, and then made additional adjustments that we'll talk through in the slides today based on input from bringing it to the committees last week. We still have a need to downgrade at least a project that doesn't fit into that financial threshold. And then other high priority projects, things that we considered were within the public engagement, how many times a specific project was mentioned. We considered in tier 2, how many times just a general project category. If it's a top project category for the public, then it got bumped up into a medium priority, and then kind of expanding on which percentile of the evaluation criteria we considered for some of the lower tiers. And then tier 3 is really those projects that are under the 50th percentile for evaluation criteria and not really identified as a top project by the public as well. So I know that was a lot of text, and we'll talk a little bit about what this means for the projects, but just really want to emphasize that we started by following a very data-driven approach based on all of the information we've done over the past 1 or 2 years on this project. And then we will be refining this based on kind of the lived experience of the community and the input from you all and from the committees on what those real highest priority needs are to be shown in the TSP. So this is a chart that shows how many projects were included in each tier by mode. And so kind of by design, there are more pedestrian and bicycle projects in this TSP. We really looked at gaps in terms of pedestrian and bicycle traffic stress as well as safety, more than we kind of reinvented the roadway needs. And this is really to align with CFAC requirements, and it also aligns well with the priorities of our committees, especially our public advisory committee. So we had, in general, identified 200 unique projects with about 80 pedestrian projects, 50 bicycle projects, 15 shared projects, which indicates that it's a pedestrian and bicycle kind of shared use path project, 10 transit projects, 25 roadway projects, primarily carryovers from the previous TSP, and other related kind of recent planning documents for roadway projects, as well as new safety projects, and then 10 freight projects as well. And so in the tier 1 constraint list, and this is based on what the technical and public advisory committees saw, but we have 2 bicycle projects, 6 pedestrian projects, 4 more shared projects, and 5 roadway primarily safety projects. And then just in general within the tier 1, you're really seeing that skewed towards pedestrian and bicycle. In the next slide, you'll just see the percentage of projects that are included in each tier. And so given the financial limitations, which we'll describe in this presentation, there are only about 10% of projects are able to fit into that tier 1 constrained list. And then we have an additional 10% that are considered high priority, but maybe don't have forecast funding available. And then tier 2 is about a little over a third of projects, and tier 4 is just a little under the last half of projects. So I described it earlier in this presentation that there's about $27.5 million that we are able to include in that financially constrained project list. And so this table kind of shows for each mode how that's contributing to the overall total. We'll describe in the slides as well that we're working with TriMet to identify what the likely match would need to be for the projects that are included for transit. That's our TriMet representative kind of let us know that it can be a bit complicated to identify what that number should be, because there is typically some local match, but ODOT might cover it, and it's kind of varies based on the project. And so we're working with him to kind of get those numbers refined, but there aren't any transit projects in that financially constrained list, and there won't be either way, just kind of because of that reason. We're about $3 million over for that financially constrained project list. And we've talked with the committees about how we can adjust that, and we'll share some of those ideas today. And you'll see that even though there aren't that many roadway projects in this plan, typical to kind of roadway projects in general, those do add up to a large amount of the grand total of projects, so something to consider. And then a nice other thing that Laura pointed out in some of the committee presentations is that there is really a limited amount of funding available compared to the need. And this is typical of kind of various jurisdictions. There's always more need for projects, and there is really money available to do the projects, but it's important to have this plan to create that opportunity to get those needs met over the next 20 years and beyond. So this project shows, we'll go slide by slide and talk a little bit about the original modal priorities that we showed to the committees and some of the suggested changes, and then we'll open it up to discussion to get all of your feedback on these priorities. So,
hey, Amy, can I take a pause for a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to check in with you to see if these maps were reflective of the latest and the greatest of the prioritized projects.
So this one is the one we showed the committee, and then on the next slide, it'll be what we've updated. Okay, and just so you know, I know it's really tough to see these maps in the room, just as a heads up. So if we maybe I would not maybe spend a whole ton of time going through them just because they're really hard to see, but that's just a caveat. Okay, yeah, that's good to know. when I think does everyone have printed packets? Or
We do not have newly printed packets. They just have the list.
okay, yeah. Well, we can. I'll talk a little bit through these, and then let's go on to the list.
That sounds good.
Great. So the pedestrian project maps, the image shows that there's a pretty wide geographic distribution of how kind of the total miles of the projects that end up on tier 1, including the constrained and unconstrained project lists. On the constrained project list, we have projects on Railroad Avenue, on Lake Road, on Harrison, on Monroe, on I think it's Logus Road. And then we also have projects on that are in the unconstrained list on 32nd Avenue, on Roswell, to the south of Roswell. Laura, I don't know if you remember what Peak 20, that street is, kind of in between 32nd and 42nd. The label is a bit hard, but that another parallel route and 34th Avenue as well. And so these projects really provide kind of broad connectivity. The prioritization included understanding of where there were sidewalks versus weren't sidewalks. So if something had a narrow sidewalk, it wasn't prioritized as high as something that had no sidewalk, recognizing that some facility is better than no facility, but there's still a need to provide a comfortable facility throughout the city. We prioritize projects within the vicinity of key destinations, including the priority focus areas related to schools, related to the town center, related to locations where there were higher densities of disadvantaged communities, proximity to parks, et cetera. And so that kind of feeds into what we end up seeing on some of these maps. Keep going.
Also, I think it's important to know too that the classification maps were really important in developing these projects. So when you look at the new bikeways classification, you look at the new pedestrian classifications, those were also taken into account to make sure that we had projects identified that would help to build out both of those systems. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. And then the TC recommendations kind of included bringing up the project on 29th to the tier 1 unconstrained list. There's a suggestion to reduce the project on Monroe down to be from the constrained list to the unconstrained list. Let me just have my list to describe. And then there are the project on Harvey Street, that was the name of the street, was removed from the unconstrained project list and brought down to being a tier 2 project. So there's just a number of different changes and adjustments, and I think Laura, we'll talk through them a little bit more in the table, but just recognizing that there's been pretty significant shifts, I think, to some of those projects, but there are some projects that definitely remained, like projects on Lake and on Railroad and on Stanley and also on Harrison. Next slide. So there's the original modal priorities for bicycle were somewhat limited, really with the project on 34th, a project on Harrison being on the tier 1 constrained list, and then some other projects on the unconstrained list. Go to the next slide. The TC and AC recommended adding more projects to the unconstrained list and really extending the number of projects around Harrison that were included on the constrained list. Next slide. Transit, again, we mentioned that there's only one project on the tier 1 unconstrained list, and then there's no projects on the financially constrained list. In general, TriMet has any projects are really closely coordinated with TriMet, and so the city of, you all don't have that much control over what TriMet prioritizes. And so this planning effort does help them understand what projects are a priority for the community when they're developing their own plans. But we kind of focus more energy on prioritizing the projects that were more under your all's control. And so that's kind of why there's not a lot of transit projects in general, and why there's not a lot on that top tier 1 priority list. Next slide. So with the TC and AC, as I mentioned, we're still working on identifying the appropriate dollar amount to show as the local match for the implementation of the transit routes or the expansion of the transit routes for those projects, but there weren't any other changes to the prioritization recommended by either committee. Next slide. So the roadway and intersection projects, Again, the tier 1 projects really are generally prioritizing safety. And there's some different intersection projects that are classified as roadway projects, but do include kind of elements for improving pedestrian and bicycle crossing and just facilities at those intersections. If you go to the next slide. Yes, well, I think there were some recommendations about clarifying for some of these projects. There's some projects that are listed both in the pedestrian and bicycle plan and then also in the roadway plan. And so just a note in general that as part of the TSP, we're planning on developing a table that will help kind of connect what projects might be good candidates to package together, even just beyond this tiered process, recognizing that certain projects, if they're the city, if you guys are pursuing a grant opportunity for that project, you would likely want to package it with some other projects to do them together. However, for some cases, if you're doing an intersection project and you want to improve the pedestrian bicycle crossing, you might do that on your own, even if you don't have the money to do the full roadway improvements at that location. And so because of some of those nuances, we decided to keep the different projects kind of separated out so that there's flexibility to do them individually when there's lower amounts of funding available, but we'll also make sure to include some context for where there's opportunities to group those together if funding does allow. And so that was kind of a big takeaway discussion with conversations with city staff and also conversations with the advisory committee. Next slide. So originally the prioritization criteria were developed to keep a project on the tier 1 list for every mode, not necessarily the constrained list, but the unconstrained list, so that there was a high priority project for each mode to move forward. And through conversations with staff and the committees, I think it was just determined that the freight projects just weren't appropriate to be included in the tier 1 project list. And so if you go to the next slide, Laura, there was originally kind of a corridor freight mobility study planned, and we decided to move it down to tier 2 or tier 3, just to recognize that the roadway, transit, ped, and bike projects are all really higher priorities for the city. So now to discussion. So we wanted to just ask if you feel like the projects in tier 1 reflect the most important priorities over the next 20 years, recognizing that we're really wanting to take a holistic look at these priorities and that there is some movement that can happen. So we want to, be accurately reflecting the overall priorities, but maybe making sure that we recognize that there is some flexibility at the time of implementation to help alleviate some concerns potentially about the exact location of every project. And then if there are any projects that should be reconsidered given the funding constraints, so recognizing that there's a very limited amount of funding. Should anything else need to be moved up into tier 1 constrained or tier 1 unconstrained? And if anything gets moved up, something else will have to get moved down when we're talking about the constrained project list.
Okay, thanks, Amy. And I don't know, Amy, if you need to sign off now. Matt's in the room now, so you guys can play tag and say you're it, and he can take over from here if you need to go.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And then the only thing I would say, I think, and maybe Matt, you can speak to this a little bit as well, is before we kind of jump into it, just to say something about the project descriptions themselves. We kind of base those project descriptions on trying to get to a level of PLTS and a BLTS. Remember, because we have these new performance measures standards that we needed to set, and we needed to analyze, and then we need to report back to the state on how we're doing with implementing the plan, and if we're reaching these kind of BLTS and PLTS low scores. And so that was something that it might be kind of a generic description that would tell us how we would meet that bicycle level of stress on that road, but it will depend really when we go into design the project as to what kind of roadway there is. I mean, we're not going in and really designing each project. This is kind of like a placeholder to say we need a project here. We're trying to get to a different level of stress for peds and bikes. And so you might see a bicycle lane on both sides of the street in a project description, but it might actually turn out to be a bike and ped path on one side of the street, just depending on the situation. So it's pretty flexible. There's also kind of things where we're not getting into really like the details of what, say, a bikeway treatment would be like, where we're not getting into diverters and traffic calming things. What we're trying to do is have kind of our TSP point to NACTO standards and point to, I guess, ODOT's actually facility standards for is it the performance measures? Yep, performance measures, so that we are not kind of designing what those particular bikeways look like at the moment, but that we've noted that they are important and that we are going to do certain treatments. It's just based on right of way and how much money we might have available at the time. So those are just some kind of caveats to this as you're thinking about how to move things around. And if you have questions about like the exact project description, it's important and not important at the same time. We don't want to be really far off of it, but it's not the end all be all of the design of the project. So that's just something to keep in mind. And with that, I guess, sorry, Chair Edge, should I hand it back over to you?
Yeah, I just have a quick question to kind of kick off the questions about, and it's, about one of the detailed project descriptions. And so I'd kind of like to understand, in this context, how important, unimportant is this detail. So when on project R6, which is on the tier 1 financially unconstrained, talks about adding a widening northbound River Road near McLaughlin to provide a second northbound left turn lane. I thought that there had been discussion about this in the past about revising this language to not use the term, provide a second turn lane, but to kind of leave it more ambiguous. So how important, unimportant is it to call out specifically adding a second lane at this intersection versus just something more ambiguous about, studying, or you know what I mean? It's like, I'm trying to figure out, like, should we really be concerned about this, this level of detail, or and walk it back, or should we, just kind of leave it alone and know that it's always in flux anyway?
Yeah, Jim.
So my understanding is they actually want to change that intersection. And so instead of having it divert into two different lights, that it's all at one light there at River. So you would
with 22nd as well?
Yes. So
okay.
It is on our regional transportation plan. It is a ODOT project because you're in ODOT right away. So,
okay.
But that's the idea, is you would actually remove the further south, north intersection and combine it into one intersection at that location to kind of be safer to roam around there. So for that one, I'd almost want to leave it, just because it talks about, changing how that intersection interacts and making that area a little bit safer coming in and out That's my only 2 cents, but if we want to change a little bit there, I'm fine too.
Joseph, does that answer your question?
Yeah, mostly. I'm glad to have the additional information about like what kind of the goals of the project are. I didn't get that out of the project description. And so I guess what I would like to see is the project description better align with what we're trying to accomplish there rather than call out specifically, like all it calls out is widening the approach to accommodate 2 left turn lanes instead of 1. And it doesn't sound like that's even a priority. It sounds like the priority is, kind of improving traffic flow through the combined intersection of 22nd and River and 99E. So I in a case like that, it's like I'd rather have the project description better align, with our intent here, so that we're adopting a project that describes what we intend to do rather than call out a kind of improvement that seems to contradict a lot of, where things are going with CFEC and, our other, we've already made improvements to that intersection. To that, to the active transportation along River Road. I realize that what's left is, motor vehicle movements, but I think there's just a better way of describing it so that it doesn't.
I think we agree with you. So we got it. I think that, I understand exactly what you're saying. I agree with you. And I think that we can basically kind of take what Jen just said and try to change the project description to encapsulate what Jen just described.
And I think the regional transportation plan calls that out a little better, so maybe we can just mimic that description.
Yeah, it's a good point, and we should change that, and we'll make a note and we'll do that for sure.
And I think you're right that we discussed it previously, and I think we just
overlooked it.
Yeah, if I remember that conversation, I think there was discussion, but not necessarily clarity on what the end result would be. So thanks for the reminder.
Yes, thank you. We're so deep in these maps on a daily basis. I feel like we're miss little things. So whenever you find them, let us know for sure.
I think what happened is we didn't change the detailed description, but we changed the flexible description. So that probably is why there's a discrepancy.
I think you're right, because I remember talking about this one.
Just kind of following up on the question of descriptions, Laura, I know you kind of said, with bike lanes, for example, we probably we'll put a delineator in, we'll instead use NACTO standards, which I'm really excited about us kind of adopting that. I was curious though, how those standards might apply in some segments where there might be higher speeds, there might be higher volumes, and those higher speeds and those higher volumes might not say put a 5-foot bike lane in. They might say put a protected bike lane in with cement curbs, and that would have an impact on budget. So I'm kind of wondering, just like, can you share more about how you're thinking about that as you're, I guess, working in hundreds of thousands of dollars increments?
Maybe someone else can answer this better, but the way that I'm thinking about it is that we're always going to hope and shoot for the highest standard that we can get. That's just what we're going to shoot for. But a lot of times we understand that based on other constraints that we're not going to be able to do that. And so I think that there's kind of an art and a science to it. And we just know that if it says one thing, well, we're not going to necessarily be able to get that.
Okay.
And maybe I don't know if Matt or Jen, Camilla, you have another.
Yeah. Something that I've learned through these processes is that we are, first of all, NACTO, that changes pretty much every year, every 2 years. So if we are looking at project 18 years from today, we don't know what's going to happen at that time and what are the best recommendations. So that's why we keep it open on the description. That's one point. The second point is I think one of the main elements that we use to propose this type of descriptions and projects was to reach level of stress for both pets and bikes. What we scope here, and pretty much Kittleson helped us with this process, was to do the level of stress analysis today and what the goal is for each mode and road. And that's what we propose. Like, this specific road needs to reach this level of stress, so we need to improve today these elements on the roadway, and that cost this X amount of money. I think that's one of the core processes when we were describing these projects. And the third one is, again, just as we know, roadway changes, management of roadways changes. So we want to keep it a little bit ambiguous of, as most of you were mentioning, to just have flexibility by the time we actually have the resources and we put it down on the CIP book.
Great, thanks.
In addition, I would just add, we're really trying to actually lower speeds in the city. Like, you're gonna see that 20 is plenty is built in, because that's what we heard from the community. They wanna see, speeds reduced. So we can, as a city, drop 5 miles per hour on all collectors and locals. So we'll be looking and evaluating what that is, throughout our city. And so when you reduce those volumes, right, those speeds or whatever, that also just changes how that affects what our stress level is. And sometimes it allows us to do different alternatives that are in here, but it's still one mechanism that we're going to start utilizing that we haven't in the past.
That's very good to hear. Were there any other questions from the commission if we're ready to move on to the next topic?
I mean, Chair Edge, I think, as you know, I kind of proposed a updated set of projects. I think most planning commissioners have seen, I think staff have seen. I don't know if we want to talk through some of that. I appreciate the conversation kind of talking through some of the analysis. I think some of the kind of proposed amendments that I'm thinking of, I feel like could help us improve connectivity, get to some existing destinations, deliver kind of on some past planning work as opposed to kind of starting some new things, connect better in the region, address some of the car safety issues. I think I've actually elevated some things that were on the Tier 1 unconstrained list. And maybe spread out some project benefits a little bit more broadly. So happy to kind of talk in more detail about that if that makes sense. I'm sure there's also policy questions other folks have. So I don't know, how do you want to handle things, Chair?
Just in terms of the presentation, are we done with the project list portion of the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so this would be a good time, I think, to have the discussion about the project list. Then, we can certainly. Is there more presentation to go after this?
No, this is the heart of the work we're doing tonight is trying to get to a kind of a consensus if there's anything that we need to change in the prioritization so that when we walk out of the room tonight, we can know that we are going to tell the city council that you all are recommending to change. That's
perfect. And then,
yep.
Yeah, that's great. And so there's not really plans for any policy discussions or anything like that. We're really just focused on the project list, the draft project list that's before us tonight, right?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. Then I think now is a perfect time, Commissioner Sherman, for you to take the floor and describe the particular changes that you'd like to propose.
Sure. Great. Well, I think when you're looking at kind of the updated list that Laura shared earlier, this updated list was reflecting some of the Transportation System Plan Advisory Committee discussions that I think happened last week. You can see kind of the list that I had also kind of shared out, also kind of highlights in dark green some of those projects. There you go, Matt. Laura graciously printed large format copies for all of us. I don't know, Jen, if you actually have a copy. And so, you can see, I guess if you're looking at the table, you can see kind of the existing Tier 1 financially constrained list, essentially not highlighted. Then you can see in dark green, this kind of changes category, the projects that I believe were kind of elevated by the Transportation System Plan Advisory Committee. And then you can see kind of a suite of projects that, again, I think are helping us move towards some of our goals. And then on the backside, you can also see some of the ways that you get to almost balanced budget. I believe the list, as was just tallying it up, takes us to $28.7 million. So that is still a little bit over the top. But I know some people are crossing their fingers. The city might get a little bit more money from the state legislature in a week. And there's also probably opportunities to downscope things a little bit. And I've kind of shared on the far right column some possibilities of how we could maybe get there if indeed we say this list is good and now it's at too high of a price tag, and how do we kind of thread the needle there? So that's kind of it. And I'd say at a high level, maybe broadly, some of the projects that I'm kind of suggesting, you can see there's a few projects that involve kind of the eastern part of the city and taking the super exciting multi-use path from Railroad all the way out to the Aquatic Center. Making improving the intersection connection at the Aquatic Center, and also doing the very important study that our city engineer has talked about with the intersection at Linwood and Harmony and Railroad. That was down lower, and I think that's a priority to the community when I talk to people about that. So that's kind of a package of some of the projects. There's another kind of, I'd say, package that is about kind of the central Milwaukee bikeway projects that a number of us, Chair Edge, myself, and maybe a few staff, talked about years ago. I think we need to see those over the finish line. We need those connections to happen so that people can get to some of the great infrastructure that's going to go online at Monroe. And I think if we don't do that, then we just built a great east-west spine and you can't get people to it as easily. So I think there's kind of a set of things there. Happy to hear other people's thoughts. But there's also, I'm suggesting some projects in the northwest corner of the city, literally at our limits on the Springwater Corridor, where there could be opportunities there to kind of help have Milwaukee play its role in closing the Selwood Gap. As you may or may not know, the railroad owner that had been challenging to work with recently passed away. He's left the railroad to the Railroad Museum, who is interested in trying to be a partner on some things. So I think, when I think about our 20-year vision, I think there's an opportunity there that we haven't had. And then I think there's, some other car safety projects that would have great benefit to people walking and biking. Also interested in just a few of the downtown 99E to Milwaukee Bay Park connections, just knowing that, the trolley trail is there, it's a major connector, and making it safer for people to get from trolley trail, from Selwood, from Oak Grove, from Milwaukee Bay Park into downtown is an economic development play. I think we kind of need to make it. I probably glossed over a few things, but that's kind of, I'd say, the summary of some of the ads that I was thinking about. And then on the subtractions, there's, I think, some items that it sounded like generally Transportation System Plan Advisory Committee was willing to deprioritize. And, I think one of the ones that I know is that there maybe wasn't full consensus on is Stanley, thinking about the sidewalks on Stanley. One of the things that I was kind of thinking about, and I raised it earlier kind of in the planning process, was some of the metrics we used that led us to the output that probably put that project up a little bit higher. The fact that how Stanley is classified would have bumped that up. And I think the analysis, and do we want that classification to be how that street functions? I think I've asked that question that at the dais, and we'll ask it again. I also want to note, because I decided to map it out because I was curious, but literally as the child walks from the school out to Linwood and then up a quarter mile is up to Lloyd on the north and then almost Railroad on the south. So we were using quarter mile buffer for a lot of the analysis, and we're talking about improving the whole corridor. And maybe there's also would be a smaller segment of that. But anyways, there's some cost savings there if we were to deprioritize that. I'm also suggesting deprioritizing the 6-foot sidewalks on Harrison from 32nd to 42nd. There's a major savings there. I appreciate that we have a goal of fiscal stewardship. And I know as I've talked to a few community members in the last week, many folks have noted we already have a 4-foot sidewalk on Harrison, and it feels preposterous to rip it all up just to extend it 2 more feet, which I personally agree with as well. So I think we could find some savings there. And then, I think there could be some other savings on the Project B26, which the TSP Advisory Committee moved up, and I think some of them would be very happy for some of the other moves that we're talking about, such as the ped path out to the aquatic center and other things like that. So that's kind of a high level summary. Maybe I'll pause.
Yeah, thanks for that description of your proposed changes. Are there any comments from the other commissioners about these proposed amendments?
I have a quick question. What
go ahead.
Safe Streets CIP mean in the comments, the section that's purple?
Yeah, I had heard that there's maybe something in the works to try and come up with a funding allocation for pavement marking, signage, other traffic calming. So maybe that's accurate, maybe that's not. And I think that was then thinking about could some of those projects could be, maybe funded through other sources, spot grants, SAFE program, other things there.
There's going to be, I think, Counselor Anderson has been talking about having a bikeway bucket that gets developed for the CIP.
Okay.
So that
That's,
there's
I
some
think, what-
sort
yeah,
of number that he's going to talk to the city council about when we do the CIP, so that there
Yeah.
are those kind of low hanging fruit projects that we'll be able to do, like paint and whatnot. So
Yeah.
that those might fall into that.
Kind of cheaper, quicker interventions.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I just wanted to clarify
No,
because
that's
the SAFE projects that we have been doing have been now integrated into this TSP. So I just want to make clear that there's not a separate SAFE bucket sitting out here that we're pulling from. But yes, we are looking at a lower kind of low hanging fruit kind of bucket that we're going to do along with maintaining the spot program that the CIAC will manage and bring that in.
So we're going to try to, I think, at some point move away from calling it safe projects, only because they're different. There's a SAFE program, and then there's
do we do unsafe projects?
I know we're like, we call it Millie Trails, or like
Just-
we call it something silly,
Just make sure we were on the same page.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Go ahead if you have your next questions.
Can I just, before you, just one thought. I don't know how helpful it is to go through, like, you presented a lot of things.
A summary, yeah.
It's a summary.
Level, yeah.
And so I don't know if it's helpful to kind of go through the projects and just the ones that you've talked about and whether or not those should move up or down, unless if that's not the case and everybody just kind of says, yep, I'm going to go share it with Commissioner Sherman on this. Or do we want to actually have a little bit of a conversation about each of the projects? And so I guess I would add then Commissioner Hess, if you have something that you would want to add to that conversation as well. Because what I did is I went through and I noted every single project that Commissioner Sherman talked about on this project list to say, well, he said that he's suggesting they go down. Is that something that we're all comfortable with? It's like, so in kind of going through them so that we just have a clear understanding of what would be moving around. And then we can't really crunch the buckets right now. So we'd have to go back and crunch the buckets to see how it landed. I think
Yeah.
you said you did it.
At least on kind of the as proposed, there's a total of, I didn't do the numbers. I could probably do that if I stopped talking for a few minutes, but there's a total of 18 pedestrian projects, 5 bicycle projects, and then 7 kind of road auto projects. Now, and of course, some of these bleed over and they have co-benefits, but that's kind of how it stacks. And I do think that maybe is an increase in the number on the auto projects or car projects. But again, I think some of what I'm kind of trying to propose is like, again, on the like Linwood Harrison intersection, like that was below the cut list. And it's like that needs to move. Like I talked to so many people that are like, that's the worst intersection in the city. You might not agree, you may or may not agree from the data, but it's really challenging. And then, I think R2 was something I was proposing to move up, which the TSP advisory committee also wanted to move up. The Harrison 224 crossing, so those I think were some of the things, but I'm rambling again, so maybe I'll just look to.
Well, this one's got R2 in the financially constrained list.
I
wanted to move up.
was gonna propose it myself, but it was already proposed by others.
Oh, okay,
So I'm
got it,
just
got it,
like
yeah.
plus oneing others'
Okay,
great ideas.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to understand a little bit better, the list that you've produced, Commissioner Thurman, is built off of the original list, not necessarily what the TSP advisory committee recommended to change first?
No, it was built off, so it was built off the original list, then what the TSP advisory committee had added to it, and this is kind of building off of that.
Oh, so you are building off of the TSPAC's work.
I am, and that's where I think you can see where, again, kind of suggesting some additions that the TSP advisory committee didn't do, and I'm suggesting those additions mainly because I'm also suggesting a fairly hefty cut in terms of, the sidewalks on Harrison, and then moving the Stanley 5-foot sidewalks down, which was something that was discussed by the TSP advisory committee. I think many, but not all, maybe that's a fair characterization, or some, necessarily consensus on that.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Well, and if it's helpful, Matt ever so kindly kind of went through, and there's 10 additional things, Commissioner Sherman, that you are suggesting moving up. There's 10 things that you're talking about moving up, and there's 4 things that you're dropping down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could be just as simple as us kind of like going
Talking
through
through 'em,
those
sure.
and then being like, do we agree that this should move up or down? And then, does that work? I think, because it's not that big of a list. So sometimes it's
We don't
just
have to
right
be here till 10.
Right. And Commissioner Hess, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I would. Just from a numbers perspective, doing the math on the difference here with the projects that we have proposed, that Jacob has laid out, we're currently at 28,000 or 28,695,000, so we're still $1 million over. That's not considering the potentially $2 million a year that the state legislature, assuming something gets passed in this special session, would bring in. I know we can't count on that currently because it doesn't exist, but there is some potential there. So just something to keep in mind as we go through the projects.
Yeah, that's a good, I mean, I know that there is Councilor Anderson had sent around what the potential impact of that might be. And I think, sorry, I didn't have on my button. I think that might fluctuate like between 550 and 600,000 a year.
I think the total, I think the first year was like 1.7 and then it goes, or 1.9.
Okay, so maybe I'm misrepresenting that. So
sorry, yeah. So the special session would add an addition. So 270 this year for the city, and then a little over 500,000.
Yeah.
Continually. Yeah.
So we could kind of just rethink a little bit about the numbers to make sure, see what our buckets are with the new information, and then re-look at like what does that mean then ultimately. And all of that money, I guess, that gets allocated from the legislature doesn't necessarily just go for these projects. There's other projects that money feeds into. So I think that we get for grind, it's for maintenance as well. So I don't exactly, I'm talking out of my skis right now, but we'd have to just kind of go in and try to understand that a
Yeah.
little bit more to see what would actually get added to our TSP budget.
And I think just to kind of add to that, like, because that is a variable that we don't know
Yeah.
about, we should know about that pretty quick. Before you go to council, you should
Yeah.
know about that. And I do think there's also kind of in the yellow column, some possible scope changes that I was kind of thinking about that could be levers to play with things. You know, bike lanes on Harrison from 26th to 42nd. You know, I'm not necessarily the most fond of that, partially because like we just have Monroe. I know Jen's like, what? So I think honestly, from like a fiscal sustainability perspective, we have Monroe Street Greenway getting ready to come online. Let's get people there rather than duplicate things. So a thought that I've had is what if we trimmed it down from 26th to 34th? Because the central Milwaukee bike projects would roll through 34th. So you would, you know, come off of 34th and then be able to kind of take your right down to downtown, but not necessarily go up the hill. So, and if you wanted to go up the hill, you just maybe keep on to Monroe. You could probably save a lot of money there because, I mean, that's literally taking half the project. And so like that could be enough to close the gap. We might not want to do that though. And, you know, other ideas is just like, is tweaking at the edges of these other 3 projects that are all central Milwaukee Bikeway projects where, you know, on Llewellyn, you might not need an 8 to 10 foot path. You could think about it as a shared road and put the markings down. And same thing for when you turn right, then from there and you end up on 34th. You could think about it as a shared road and not need the multi-use path. You could probably do some of that once you cross over Harrison and are on 34th coming to that dead end. The one thing being, you just need to make sure that we get the crossing really good. So, you know, there's probably some cost savings there. I think we'd have to definitely look to the engineering team and our experts to help us figure that out.
Totally get where you're coming from. But one project that I think the R7, the Linwood and Harmony intersection, we are gonna get $750,000 from the county. I don't need that in the fiscally constrained to take that in, so let's drop that one down. Right now, that's $555,000. You're halfway there. So
And I'm sorry, so you said R7?
isn't that,
That's on the that's tier 1 financially unconstrained.
But it's on, I guess. I think
Someone
Jen is
moved it up.
suggesting it's on my constraint.
it's on
Just saying,
his
pull it
constraint.
back
I'm
down.
telling him to pull that one down,
Yeah.
back down. Because, and the reason why is because I'm getting funding from other sources
Yeah, of
to
course.
fund it, okay? So it is
job.
absolutely important, and it is the number 1 unsafe intersection in the state.
Yeah.
So, doesn't mean just because I'm moving it down that it's not important. We're just getting
You're
funding
going to get the
elsewhere.
money. Yeah, no,
So I don't need to have it
Okay.
constrained. Okay? One suggestion.
that's great. Congratulations on that. That's,
They'll come in, you'll see it in the next CIP, starting in 2028, fiscal year 2028, those funds will become available. So, well, yeah, that part's gonna start in 2027 and, ramp up.
great.
So.
Do we want to, as you were suggesting, Chair Edge, what do you think about Laura's suggestion, maybe just taking it project by project?
I was hoping to avoid that, but if there's only 10, I think we can do it. So,
I wouldn't say let's
I
go through
think-
all of them for sure. Just go through the ones that were identified.
Well, it was like 11, I just took one off.
So the first one that I've got
I
is
think it's
P17.
these
And
green ones, yeah.
P17, Jacob is suggesting that we demote it.
Oh, you're going to start on the hard conversation.
Well, I'm just starting at the top of the project list.
Oh, your
literally
list.
take-
Okay.
I've taken this.
Yeah,
and done a
yeah.
crosswalk with everything
Okay.
that Jacob
Yeah.
has suggested. I'm just gonna go through them down the list, if
Great.
okay. So if everybody looks, it's the P17, that's the Harrison, the one that we were just talking about. And so, Jen, I guess I would look to you to kind of talk through what you were thinking about for, sorry?
We don't see it. What is this big package?
That one,
Yep.
P17, it's about middle
So-
of the page.
Okay, my 2 cents,
Oh, I see it. I don't see the comments here.
Yeah, so I'm walking you through which ones, I'm gonna walk you through them in order based on, Commissioner Sherman's comments. That's what we're gonna do.
Okay.
Just that way we can just kind of keep it locked in.
oh,
So I think that the important thing, and Jen, I know that you have a big project that you're wanting to do.
So I-
Harrison, so I wanted you to speak to that.
yeah, I think the important part on Harrison is that we make sure we keep the safety assessment on the constraint. That is the first step of Harrison that needs to happen.
The study.
It's a study.
Yeah.
It's a
That's
safety
still on,
assessment.
it's still on the.
So that's like my main one. It is where we have, besides the other intersection, Harmony, right? This is the second place in our city that we have the most accidents, is on Harrison. And so for me, like, if I'm not starting to address that, I think that's a big problem in our city. But I also recognize we need outside funds to help us build that. And we really should do it as an entire corridor, not super small little things. Where it's an arterial and we allow parking on it. So we have plenty of space to build bike and pedestrian facilities, but I do recognize we probably don't have to have it necessarily completely on the constraint list, and it could jump down to the unconstrained list because I'm really gonna push to get federal fundings to do it. Okay?
Okay, so,
So can we, I mean, I guess we're agreeing to have it split into an assessment and then the construction of the, whatever the solution is based on the assessment, right?
and we have an assessment.
Assessment is,
It's, which number is it?
Yeah,
that's
I don't know.
R, it's an R.
Oh, here we go.
There's
It's
so
the
many
next page,
things.
R28. So we have R28,
Yep.
which is in the financially constrained. So we're gonna keep
That's
that
where
in
I
the
want.
financially
Which we have
constrained.
to, yeah.
Have to.
This is, yeah.
That's what we need.
But it sounds like everybody's comfortable with moving that one. Okay, check mark. Okay, so the next one is P43. Commissioner Sherman has proposed jumping that down. Again, that's this Stanley. We're starting with the hard
know,
ones
yeah.
first, but that's okay. Stanley, which there was just a lot of conversation about that. And,
Right. Specifically, we got, it got mentioned quite a few times when we went out to the public, that sort of list of engagement events that Laura mentioned when we first started the meeting. People just brought it up a lot.
I get the most comments about Stanley. You might think it's 29th, but the most comments I actually got on Stanley. Of how do we get infrastructure there because of the schools? And it's on both sides. It's on the north and the south side, right? And we're working on the north side at the moment with the county. It would be the one I would prefer to keep up as much as possible. If I
And
could.
maybe there's a conversation, so maybe we could just, when we go to city council, we can say, this has been a topic of conversation, both at the advisory committee level, at the planning commission level. Councilor Anderson will have his final say kind of at the council meeting also, because I know that he thinks that this should get moved down. But I'm happy to go in with a recommendation to move it down if planning commissions decide that they want to do that. I just think it warrants a conversation because it has been such a topic of conversation for engineering staff and for the folks in that neighborhood who have been asking for it.
And I think I'll just, to make the policy point again, and Nick's got his mic on, and I don't know if Chair Edge also wants to say anything. I think a fundamental problem is we have misclassified that road, and that's not any of these engineers. This was engineers probably 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Like, I don't think it should be classified what it's classified as. People are unhappy with it because we've like let it be I think it's a collector.
It's a collector.
It's a
Right? And it's
collector.
like, people want that to be a local street. They don't want that to be a
But I also want to
collector.
lower the speed. So that changes kind of the things.
Yeah.
I'm also not sure it needs sidewalks on both sides. So I could see seeing at least a sidewalk on one side all the way down.
Yeah, that was going to be my recommendation. Yeah.
So.
With that,
So just,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, sorry, quick point of order. There's a note on this one that this was deprioritized by the TSPAC. Were we intending to discuss the ones that were prioritized or deprioritized by the TSPAC as well? I thought we were only going to talk about the ones that Commissioner Sherman was suggesting that deviated from the TSPAC's recommendations.
Chair Edge, I believe Laura is suggesting that the TSP Advisory Committee wasn't in 100% consensus on this one, whereas I think the other ones was like complete consensus. This was one where there was maybe a majority, but not everybody.
Yeah, I just felt like it warranted more conversation. It's the only one. Everything else that's on this new list that you have that we sent out this afternoon includes all of the AC recommendations that there was consensus on. Yeah.
Okay.
This is the only kind of outlier, I feel like. So I guess one idea is that instead of having sidewalks on both sides, you do sidewalks or a path on one side. So maybe that lowers the cost of it a little bit. So we could look.
Do we have like a rough estimate of like what that would do to the cost?
Does it roughly cut it in half?
I'd say it probably lowers it by about a quarter of the current cost. So,
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I was just, what I was kind of making my nitpicking comment on our BLTS, PLTS analysis was a quarter mile, and we're definitely talking about a lot more than a quarter mile worth of sidewalks. Again, kind of from the school north, a quarter mile is Lloyd Street is within a quarter mile of walking distance from the school. So from Lloyd to Monroe is all, but it also doesn't necessarily make sense to make sidewalks to nowhere.
However, we just won a RAFA grant to do railroad, 37th to Harmony. So this is one of those tie-ins, right? Like you're getting that north-south connection to that multi-use path. I think that grant also includes the intersection at 37th and Railroad in that project. So that would be one thing we can check. That would be one other one we're trying to deprioritize.
Okay, so I guess then the question back to the Planning Commission is, does the Planning Commission want to make a recommendation that we kind of look at Stanley a little bit differently and possibly recommend lowering it to the other tier, to the unconstrained list?
tier one unconstrained.
We can, we can talk.
Is there any feedback from the other commissioners at this point on this one?
Besides the changing the speed limit, are there any other traffic calming plans for Stanley?
We haven't started any design on that. This is a project that we haven't touched, right? We haven't done, we're just now touching it. We just added an RFP at the park.
I mean, one thing to keep in mind with all this discussion is we're not getting rid of the project, right? It's just not going to the highest priority of commitment funding wise. So it's not like the projects go away when we move it from one bucket to the next. And I have to keep reminding myself about that as well. So I'll just mention it.
Are there?
Thanks for the sanity check there. It's appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Edge. And I guess I was going to kind of ask, are there other funding sources that could help Safe Routes to School or other grants? Like if we were to be moving, I know I appreciate staff being as entrepreneurial as you have to be sometimes. So if we were to suggest, moving it down to like the tier one unconstrained list, is there a likelihood of finding money out there to be able to do some of it?
It's possible. Likely, I don't, we didn't get our Safe Routes to School for the other Stanley section, but it's possible. Just might.
You never know.
And you never know.
Sometimes you get the grant, sometimes you don't.
Are there any objections from the commissioners about this amendment or proposed amendment? Okay, well, that might be your answer, Laura.
So, yeah, so I think that what we can do is we will, let city council know that you all have recommended moving it down to the financially unconstrained list, but then we can also potentially lower the estimate on it as well.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So check. I'm putting little check marks next to these to say, yes, that's what we're doing. Okay, we're on to the next page. If everybody's ready, we're looking at project number B26. Commissioner Sherman has a suggestion demoting that one.
Yeah, and I think, so again,
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think, again, some of the rationale on the demotion suggestion on B26, I'm like struggling to look at my own list. Thank you to all of you for the work. There's so many pieces, so much detail, so many lists, so many projects. I think that, we are going to be having Monroe coming online, and, 40th is just 2 blocks over. And I think is in one of the other, as one of the other projects is B59. And it's, a quiet local neighborhood street. And we could probably, for less dollars, help make that north-south connection. And again, this project would then again also help just free up some resources to be able to focus on other bike connectivity projects kind of in the area. So that was kind of some of my own thinking on that.
And I will say on the flip side of that, I think the advisory committee moved it up. It was down and they moved it up just as just so we know.
Yeah, but I think the advisory committee didn't talk about a multi-use path on Harmony out to the aquatic center or filling the Selwood Gap, which I imagine those folks would be pretty thrilled about.
Will there be any additional TSPAC meetings?
There is one more meeting, but that's to look at the draft TSP. So we're kind of like, we got to move this through because we're on a deadline to get this thing adopted by the end of January. And so,
right.
Yeah. We're finally hitting up that deadline wall that we've been seeing out there in the distance for many years now, but it's real now.
Yeah, so I mean, I appreciate that, we're running up against our limits to be able to iterate with, between us and TSPAC and everything. And we usually don't like to, make recommendations that contradict our other advisory committees. But just speaking from myself, my own personal position on this one, it's this is a kind of a line item in that kind of package. If you think about what Commissioner Thurman was describing at the outset, when he took the floor, this is really a package deal about how movement is facilitated or not in certain parts of the city where there may already be nearby alternatives, and kind of the trade-off between that and providing some of these other connectivity options that help with regional connectivity and also out at some of the fringe areas of the city, but to some key destinations, and so I think that it was it's hard to look at this in isolation, and that was kind of why I was hoping to avoid this exercise, is because, we can easily look at each one of these line items in isolation and say, well, gee, I really don't think that we should be removing this one from the priority list. But taken as a part of a package element, and looking at this in context, I tend to agree with the recommendation by Commissioner Sherman for this one, even though it is in contradiction with, what the TSPAC recommended, just because of that total package element of, kind of what what opportunities, are created by, saving some money on, some of these other line items that, as Commissioner Sherman described earlier. So I'm personally in support of this one, even though it feels a little funny, to be honest.
I will say in all fairness to the AC process, just to give you all some context, is that it was a very quick conversation about a lot of changes that happened rather fast. And that I think that people dug in, but also I think that there are possibly room for improvements. And I think that if we were to circle back with them and say, these are the reasons why that some changes were made, that we probably wouldn't get a lot of pushback from them, just in all fairness.
I appreciate that feedback. And I think, that's my impression as well, particularly when you take the, kind of the sum total of what, what the moves are that, are trying to be made here, and what opportunities those create. So I appreciate, the TSPAC's work and, the recommendations that they made. But in this particular case, I am willing to kind of go against that in this case, as I kind of explained earlier. So thanks again for that clarification, Laura. That is reassuring.
Yep. So if there is consensus, I'm going to say check, yes.
Yep.
Are there any objections from the other commissioners about this line item?
No objection.
All right, everybody looks like we've got agreement here in the room. So I'm going to move on to the next one, which is the P71. Commissioner Sherman is proposing to lower that one.
P71.
This is the 224 Harrison
Yeah.
intersection pedestrian improvements.
Yeah,
and I think that's because we have it bundled with another project there, right, Jen?
Laura, okay, great. Hey, that was easy.
Yeah, I would say automatically no objections to that
That
one.
was the one I called you about, whereas like, is R2 include P71 and this? And
Okay, so then we're going to go on to the next page, and we're on to P5. It's the fourth project down on page 3, and Commissioner Sherman has suggested elevating it.
yeah. And again, I'm kind of seeing two projects kind of interlinking. P5, which is the multi-use path from Linwood to the Aquatic Center. And then B74, which is the crossing at the, at the access road to the Aquatic Center. Like those two things I think are very much together. And then I also see R7, the study, which we're moving down because Jen rattled the tin cup and got money from somebody else. I can see those three things kind of together, but I guess P5 and P74 as this kind of, as a tie there.
I remember we were talking about these in the last 2 or 3 meetings. And it was, should we keep it small so the price is affordable? Or should we bundle those things up and make it very expensive and not doing the money for the whole thing? So that's the dichotomy that we've been having with all these important projects. So I feel like we would like to hear from you guys.
I think we do them both. I've proposed we do them both, P5, B74, because, I think that this vision of being able to, at some point, get on your railroad multi-use path and then ride that all the way out to the Aquatic Center and even go beyond up to Clackamas Town Center on the work the county has done. Like that's a major move for us to be able to kind of close that.
So you recommend for these cases to bundle them up?
I reckon, or sure, bundle, I guess, yeah.
You probably would bundle them
Yeah.
in order to go out. Why wouldn't
Yeah.
you do the intersection at the same time
Yeah.
you do the
Yeah.
other project? I'm worried there's not enough money there, but
Just a quick question. Is there like an inherent savings when you bundle a project? I mean, just by just having them be all at once, right?
Yeah, but the full tag is gonna blow up.
Right.
But absolutely.
But generally speaking, if you bundle something, you might get a little savings just from that. Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I mean, if you do a bunch of small projects, right, that's still, you still have to manage every single one of those. And so when you pull that in, it's one project to manage,
A lot,
one contractor, one, so there is some efficiencies there. as
Sure.
far as that. But I don't need it in here to be bundled, like, I would bundle that as I make it a project into the CIP.
Right.
I would say, hey, this is blah, blah, blah.
And something that
Could we prioritize those together, like in the same
You would,
priority?
Yeah, definitely.
yes, it looks like you want it in financially constrained tier one.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I'm just making sure that, that there's a good reason to bring the second one up as well, from your perspective.
Which I have suggested that on my, if you look at my spreadsheet, it's one and then two right next to each other. 'Cause,
Yeah.
again, I kind of, as city engineer is saying, see them as a package.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that feedback from Jen.
Something I've been trying to put on the table for Kettleson Planning and Engineering is to have each table with each of the tiers and then add to the document a recommended table of projects. We recognize in this case that P5 is one project and then B74 is another project. But then in another table, after this document, we say like, that makes more sense if we build both projects up. So having a bundle table that's gonna give us that flexibility and also remind, like, who knows who's gonna be here in 10 years or not. Hey, we thought about these, we identified that we approach one by one, but it will be ideal just to build it both at the same time. Yeah, that's something I've been trying to recommend, and Kettleson has been putting together some of those tables already for us. But yeah, it's a conversation. Again, it comes back to the dichotomy I was mentioning earlier. Yeah.
So I think.
Okay, great.
Just to add one more voice of support for this too, I think from an economic development perspective, linking the Railroad Avenue path that is planned up to Harmony and then Harmony through to the Aquatic Center, I think closing that gap and really maximizing the use that will be injected into that full line there is really important. And not just for getting Milwaukee citizens out to the east, but also bringing other citizens in Clackamas County into Milwaukee to do business and take on the services that we have here as well.
All right, sounds.
Yeah, thanks for those comments. It definitely, this is an important connection, and, really tying into the regional center is important, as a, being a good regional partner, helping build out the regional trails network, which this would do. All these things are really good reasons, I think, to put this on the list. Plus, it's a very exciting project with, really a high degree of utility, I think, for residents of the city. So I'm excited to support, moving these up, and I'm glad to have the conversation.
All right, great. I'm putting a check mark, bundled and checked, moving up. Okay. So the next one that we're looking at is we are looking at R4. It's towards the bottom. Commissioner Sherman has recommended moving that up. So King Road and 40, sorry? That is, R7 is already, it's already the performance study, so we'd already talked about it. Yeah, sorry, I wrote it on here and then I erased it when because we already talked about it. Okay, so back to R4.
R4, oh yeah, King Road and 42nd. And this is taking the flexible delineators that are up. Thank you again, Jen, and making them permanent is what it sounds like. And I just think it's a really great safety improvement, and kind of couples with the other, looking back on my table, it kind of couples with the other two right above it, B25 and P4, which is about 34th to 40th on King, doing bike and ped. So it's kind of like it's taking a little bed of an east-west connection there from a bike ped. It's hardening the auto improvements. And I think the bike ped east-west connection is super important because it ties into the central Milwaukee improvements happening on 34th as well. So you're kind of like, I have my little map right here. Right there, you just like, you pull it all together. And so that's why I think I'm suggesting we kind of make those three moves together.
So I'm sorry, I just want to be sure that I got it right. I heard B25, and did you say P4?
P4.
And R4.
Yeah, I got the R4, so it's just
And
adding it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, P was the one I wasn't sure.
P4,
got it.
B25,
And
R4. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any comments from the commissioners about this grouping of projects?
No comments. That sounds good.
The only comment I have in looking at the further on the list for the financially unconstrained Harvey Street, and now I'm kind of thinking, what is more of a priority, Harvey or King Road in this list?
Which project are you talking about?
Sorry, I'm talking about
Jess?
P20, Harvey Street from 32nd to 42nd, adding a sidewalk.
Well, but doesn't Harvey's getting a sidewalk on the,
I guess, is that happening? Or if we have it
From
unconstrained?
32nd all the way to 42nd, Harvey's getting a
It's
sidewalk.
gonna get
It's
one.
under
Okay,
construction.
so it's already, well, nothing's
Yeah,
under
so
construction right now.
No, the contractor's
It's in,
hired.
it's in design, or, okay.
We've awarded a contractor.
This is
Like, it's
breaking
not
news.
out there
This is
yet,
breaking
but
news.
like they break ground next week.
Exactly. Like,
I love to hear it, okay.
they're going out.
So then I guess
Yeah.
in that sense, so then what do we have here for P20 then? Is that just,
That's a second sidewalk, other side
is
of the
that a
street.
second
No,
sidewalk, or is that?
we need to pull that.
Okay,
Apologies, mistake. It
All
was uncovered at the advisory committee meeting. It should have been removed.
I guess-
Wasn't.
It should
Yeah,
be
I
removed.
just
We're
wanted-
not going back to Harvey, sorry.
okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure
Except for
that
water.
something is happening there and this is not,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
But there is a gap that is identified on here at the intersection of 32nd and Harvey to get to Belfort to like make that
Oh, yeah, I
connection.
saw
That
that,
needs,
yeah.
that is a gap that is serious
That's
that
a
I want to
very-
see
yeah.
done.
It's not on my list. I was trying not to put too many things in my neighborhood.
I would say it is in the, like, why would it do the intersection at 32nd and Harvey without going like 50 feet to?
yeah.
That's P118, right? And so that's a separate line item.
Yeah, P118 is the PED intersection
Yes.
improvement at 32nd and Harvey, which we talked, I think has been talked about at separate times. So you're suggesting you
Yeah.
package that with that other project, Jen?
Yeah, promote it, just,
Yeah.
Okay.
um,
So I guess maybe just to close out
Yeah,
the
to
King
close
Road
it,
improvements, I am in favor of that. Sorry for the sidebar here, but thanks for clarifying. I think again,
Yeah,
just on
right.
this project, adding that connectivity to that economic center, that neighborhood hub where the Safeway and the rest of the businesses are there is really important. And this would be a great project to do that.
I just want to be sure. I got sidetracked. I don't know. I did not capture what
There's
you all
too
just
many
decided.
numbers.
Yeah. So just, if you could just let me
I don't know if
recap.
why don't you have this list?
Commissioner Lather,
I
do you have any
do.
thoughts on
This
this?
one is easier because I'm going
Good.
through the real
Yeah, so
project
we were,
list.
From a commission in the room, I think we have consensus to leave it on the list.
yeah,
Leave which one on the list?
our,
118. 118.
No, we're not
we were
talking-
talking,
P4.
we were P4, B25, and R4. Leave them on the list.
Oh, yeah, I already had that already done and moved up already, y'all.
But then we started slightly talking about other things. Okay.
So,
Okay, okay, sorry, Jenna.
P20.
I got yeah, that's
P20
done. That's
comes
off the list. Okay.
entirely. And then we kind of started to talk about P118.
Yes, promoted.
P118, now that
Yeah.
is, okay, so here we go. So,
So
well, okay, so we're
32nd
skipping.
and
I'm trying to go
Harvey
on the-
intersection.
Trying to go on the,
Improve safety of crossing.
I want to go in order.
And this
Why not
one,
more?
I was suggesting this because this is the intersection where We're doing great work on 29th and Balfour. We're doing great work up Harvey. And this is, this is the gap.
This is
Like,
the-
how do you get across those streets? You have to go through this crazy intersection where A, we need to get the utilities out of the darn right of way. And B, we need to like figure out what the move is. But, so that's the reason, I guess, behind elevating it is we already have we've got great work already happening. We got to close the gap.
100%.
Okay, so P118, moving up. Can I go back to P58? Because we skipped that on the project list that I'm working off of.
Are you?
Oh, yeah, let's go in the order that you were running in, Laura, so that we don't lose track of anything.
Yeah, okay, so
What's
back up to P58.
Okay.
Commissioner Sherman has recommended moving it up.
So we own-
I distracted myself. Which one are we talking about?
The Springwater gap.
P58.
P58.
Listen, I know how you feel. I get distracted.
Springwater.
P58.
Yeah.
Would this be built on the north side or the south side?
Which is not our.
Okay, which is not our jurisdiction.
So this is
why this is
coordinate.
lower.
That's why it's $200,000 of staff time to coordinate. It's
Yeah.
fine. I was like, I read this, I was like, I don't think you build anything.
Or
but
that, no, but that's why.
That's why it's on the
north
unconstrained
side.
list, because we don't have
No
the jurisdiction.
jurisdiction.
And that will be, as one of you were mentioning, to close the Selwood gap. That will be also really, really good.
So,
Yeah, and so then it's like P58 is tied with B28, which is the bike project that is like our part of the gap.
Right. So only one of these we actually have jurisdiction over, and the one that we don't have jurisdiction over, we're not planning on making that a shared facility with the city, with Portland, right? So, so this is, it really is just staff time on that other line item.
I don't know.
Or I'm just trying to understand what this represents. If we're not contributing to it being a shared facility with Portland, then what does this line item represent?
Yeah, sorry to overtalk. It's a rough cost estimate associated with miscellaneous efforts to coordinate and help the city of Portland fill in the gap, but it's not a construction cost that's borne by Milwaukee. So
Okay.
So-
Does it make sense to promote this one?
I would
From-
recommend that we don't promote it because it's out of our jurisdiction. We don't want to take any money and put it into a bucket that we don't know when they're going to do it. Like the point of the constraint is that we're going to try to move projects into the CIP, and this wouldn't be one because we would be waiting. So, but it's still on the list. And when the conversation comes up with
Or a trails
Portland.
grant, like this would be, if we can get a trails
So you could move this down to the
unconstrained,
unconstrained, and then if action starts to happen,
then you put it in the CIP,
put it
right?
in the CIP.
You put it in the CIP.
yeah.
I'm perfectly fine removing that one unless others have super strong feelings otherwise.
Is that also for the intersection as well, B28?
Yeah.
Okay. Would our price or cost be 1.4 million also for that? Yeah, I mean, if that intersection is largely
intersections
outside
are
of our
crazy.
I
jurisdiction.
don't know if we own half or we might own half.
I think we own half.
We own half, so
But if the path is on the
Those-
north side and it's crossing the intersection on the north
it doesn't
side,
matter. The whole thing has to be reconfigured. So
Okay,
we would
okay.
probably be in it for half of it is what I would say. And that's still generous. I would say, yeah.
okay, thank you.
How do people feel about keeping B28 in?
Are you activating your microphone?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I was asking, how do people feel about keeping B28 in? So we're taking P58 off of my list,
It's not helpful.
but B28, are we keeping it or is it going?
Feedback from the other commissioners?
I would move to deprioritize it, I think, and put it in a CIP when the time comes from Portland. Commissioner Lowther?
Even the Ochico 17th intersection? Okay.
Yeah. Unless Chair or Ryan, you have anything else to add?
No.
Chair Edge, what are your thoughts? I feel like I can kind of go either way on this. So, if we were to deprioritize it, we probably land the plane in terms of the money.
That's what I was thinking too. This is probably the one item that we're discussing that I'm the most wishy-washy on. And I mean, it fits my theme of wanting to be a good regional partner and help build out the regional trails system. But I appreciate that it's not fully within. Not all of this is fully within our jurisdiction to resolve, and so I'm comfortable leaving this off of the constrained list as long as it's still a tier 1, and we're looking for opportunities around it.
I'll agree with that. I think that especially the rationale that it's not 100% in our control, and we're trying to program out money over things we control. If and when other partners come to the table, I'm sure there's probably maybe even a role for Metro to throw some money at this. So let's move it down. And frankly, we probably just closed the budget gap there, assuming we keep some of these things.
On B28. But he said move it down, saying
So-
no.
Not your budget. Well, again.
I have to make it match.
Maybe.
Yeah, he's wanting
He's
to
saying
move
to move
it
it
to
up.
tier 1 unconstrained. They're saying don't put it in tier 1 constrained.
Right, we're saying leave it where it is.
Well, currently it's on tier 3 unconstrained.
And it wants to be where, tier 2?
Tier 1 unconstrained
Oh.
or tier 2,
Still
it's below the cut.
Yeah.
Like where it lives below the cut,
Okay.
y'all can figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, I like it being a priority. I like to signal that it sends, that we're a good regional partner by prioritizing, our segments of the regional networks. But at the same time, I'll defer to staff's recommendation, I think, in this case, because, I appreciate that we're watching it and we're looking for opportunities, and but that it's outside of our control. And so whatever makes the most sense, I think, from staff's perspective, to reflect that it is a priority, but it's not entirely our priority.
Well put, well said.
Okay, great. So this is all very good and helpful. I mean that sincerely. Don't give me the eye.
How often is going through these line items very helpful? I actually feel pretty good about this exercise this time now.
Well, we have the same list, it's
We
just
do.
organized differently.
Exactly.
That's the.
Exactly. Okay, but I'm just going to make a pitch for the next one on my list,
Yeah,
and you
please.
can pivot. I'm looking at P112.
Yeah,
This is on page 6. of-
okay, so
Yeah.
P112 and P114
Okay, and 114.
are also related to P113, which the TSP Advisory Committee recommended moving up. So P113, which the TSP Advisory Committee moved up, is the intersection improvement at 99E and Monroe. So the idea being, we've completed the Monroe Street Greenway, you're trying to go to the river, and now you have a better intersection there. We had 2 other intersections identified. We had Harrison identified and Washington identified. And frankly, we just got to do them all,
Well,
right?
yeah.
Harrison is where, people are coming from Selwood to the farmer's market. Washington is Trolley Trail down to Oak Grove. Like, when you're thinking about the moves to support economic development downtown, it's all 3 of the intersections. It's not one. So, and it's not a big price tag. Like, let's find the money and move it up. And so I think that's what I'm kind of suggesting there, is just do all 3. And that's P112, 113, and 114.
Yeah, those are not
No.
projects
Dun, dun,
because they're ODOT
dun,
projects.
dun.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, didn't think about that. Well, so
Would that be all 3 of the projects?
Yes.
Yes, the three of them are
Yeah,
coordination.
unfortunately.
But can you,
So I think we should bundle them together and put them at the same tier because we prioritize them as a city the same. We value these projects the same, but it's kind of back to the same thing that we just talked about, which is that it's not truly under our control to simply just spend this money to do the thing. So I would be in favor of keeping these three projects bundled, prioritized, but recognizing that ODOT is really the responsible party.
Ooh. Unconstrained.
or I guess what would happen though if we said tier one constrained? We're going to spend staff time knocking on ODOT's door and trying to say, hey, make this stuff better. Like, is that what?
It could possibly not move forward, right? Like,
Yeah.
So this is really about trying to move projects into CIAC. Like,
Okay.
does that make sense? I understand there's a number that's associated with it, and Matt came up with a number.
Yeah, I think the number is more of a recognition of it's a match, a city match to some form of enhancement project that's more or less recognized that it's going to be driven by state funds. ODOT would probably tell you something different if they were in the room, but they'll tell you they don't have any money. But I think there's an understanding that whatever happens there, it's not going to be driven by the city. And this is an understanding that the match is some kind of contribution, but not a fully funded project.
But I mean, at some point, like the city has to advocate
Yeah.
for
This is,
for ODOT to do something, right?
It's also, and Brian just he's whispering in my ear over here and telling me there's also this other complicating factor to this is that ODOT, did a jurisdictional transfer study, and this is kind of high on their list of wanting to give this section of 99 to the city, which the city in the past has not had any interest in doing that because the street the roadway isn't maintained to the level that we would need it in order for it to accept to the jurisdictional transfer. So I think it's just like a complicated conversation because there's a lot of different things that are going on. It's like, they're probably not going to make the improvements and then hand it over to us. They're going to want to, it's an imperfect.
I know that Portland
imperfect.
required them to make some improvements on 82nd before Portland accepted.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is there, I think, like Nick, I don't want to, or what I feel like I'm hearing in yours is like, I don't want to lose our ability to advocate for ourselves because getting across 99 to the river, from the river to downtown is a major barrier.
Sure.
And so like, is there a way to just like, even just repackage this? And, these three projects each are, I think were estimated at 125, just to say like 200,000 to, have the mayor go buy some steaks and Jen, and other things like that.
Well, I mean, we could put it in tier one. And then unless there's a larger conversation about what we're actually doing and whether we are interested in jurisdictional transfer and or whether or not ODOT's going to do a project on there. So then it would get into the CIP. But there would have to be an understanding that we're not going to just move this into the CIP without some sort of partnership that's being managed with ODOT.
Have we done our own jurisdictional transfer study? Like they did their study. Have we done our own analysis to say, could we? I mean, we're doing some studies with other things.
we got from Upper saying we're not ready to take that road on. That's a big road to take. So.
And there were conversations
time,
about
that was a
this.
couple years
Yeah, it was
ago.
a couple of years ago, and we
So
actually talked
don't-
about whether or not we should talk about this again because it was it was just 5 years ago or something like probably when those conversations
So
happened. And
yes,
so
that conversation needs to come back to the table with council.
it does need to come back.
Yeah, I think just one more thing in here. I mean, one of city council's goals is to finish Milwaukee Bay, or that's part of the parks goal that the city council has. And so I think, we need to have a crossing, we need to have accessibility to be there for that to be successful as well. So
Which having this on this list, right, on it in a TSP means we can tie it to that project too. Like that's, a goal we can work with them on that. There's also,
I mean, I guess my question is there value in having it on the tier 1 financially constrained list versus having it on the tier 1 financially unconstrained list?
really matter.
Matt, that's kind of a question for you.
Personally, I don't think it matters. If you put it on the financially constrained list, you're committing energy towards moving ODOT in some form of project improvement. But it doesn't commit you to actually implementing it. It's just committing you that it recognizes your importance. If you keep it on financially unconstrained, it doesn't mean the project goes away. It just means that you're not going to prioritize what funds you have towards pushing ODOT to some form of agreement on what to do there. So that's, I guess I would treat it more along the lines of, I would recommend it go on unconstrained simply because it's a project that you don't have full commitment from ODOT, but you still recognize it as an important project by keeping it in tier 1. So.
And I guess just on the flip side of that, I think that what you all are saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that by putting it even though we're not going to spend the money, we're not going to move it into a CIP project if we haven't partnered with ODOT, but it's saying to ODOT and it's saying to everybody that looks at our TSP that this is our priority. We've got to get these crossings fixed, and I don't know how we're going to get it
Milwaukee's
done.
got money on the table, ready to
We've
go.
got $300,000.
That's right.
Or whatever it adds
To
up
coordinate.
To coordinate. But you could still put it on in the top tier. If that is an indication that you want to make, to your point, I mean, and I'll just say, I think it's a good idea. Because then moving it up, because I feel super strongly about this street as well, and like the challenges that are there and how it completely bifurcates everything. And but that's a conversation for city council, I think, ultimately to have to decide and what that looks like.
I would recommend, keeping it on or promoting it to the constrained and let city council decide.
The whole package of 3 projects?
Yeah, the three streets.
112, 113, and 114.
Yes. Yep.
It also gives council some, it also would give council some flexibility if they're trying to tweak at the edges themselves. So I agree. I think submitting it as a package to council, because again, I think as Commissioner Hess said, we have Milwaukee Bay as a goal. We have downtown business as a goal. What's the thing standing between them? 90-90, right? Like, let's put some money on the table and figure it out.
Yeah, do we have another project or set of projects that matches 2 of the 3 city council goals?
Okay, so we're going to check mark that, moving it up. Okay, got it. We've only got a couple left that we haven't talked about yet, I think.
Right.
We have got B25. Right now.
B25 was part of our King Road package.
Okay, that's right.
Correct.
That's right. Got it. Okay, cool. And so, and then I'm flipping. I think that was it.
B75 might be the only one.
B75.
And B75 is part of the Central Milwaukee Bikeway set of projects that the TSP Advisory Committee elevated. That was for them, that was P32, P33, P34. I think they might have just missed it as one of the projects. So this is the section on 32nd from Meek to Llewellyn, and then they loaded the other projects in, but this is kind of that 32nd Avenue
So
piece.
this is the section that's on,
P75, yeah.
this is the section that's actually on the Murphy site. I don't know if we can actually build it without having that development go. Because we need dedication.
Oh, yeah, that's part of that. They would have to build it.
They would have to provide.
Yeah.
So that's the only, that is, that's what I
We're
know
not going to
about that
build it without that property getting redeveloped.
Yeah, I was hoping when that develops, they build that section and they could pull it through their development, or they can pull it along 32nd. But, so they could potentially tie it in with 29th coming down through the hillside facility and then extend it through their development and then over to Llewellyn, which would be really cool to get it off of 32nd, or they would at a minimum have to go down 32nd. There's like kind of two options there.
Would having the resources in the CIP, like, I guess is there a downside aside from you can't spend that money on something else? Because again, I feel like having the resources to like close the gaps, get the things done if and when you can, is that there's value in saying, we're committed to this, we want to figure it out.
They're required to do it, so it's a matter of when that development goes, as part of their development.
That's right.
I have that right. I have like an actual like agreement with them.
So what's the 140,000 of our estimate
So
for?
technically, I'd probably do an SDC credit for it, but, yes, that would be money that we would not be getting from.
That's probably not what's in that. That's the thing.
To be honest, I can't remember what's in there and where that number comes from, and I don't have my tools in front of me to be able to tell you precisely, but I think whatever it is, the number doesn't feel right, just by looking at it, so, I'd have to go back and change that.
We also have the description calling out the pathways on the east side, which is not the Murphy side of the street. Maybe just a error, but if it needs to be on the west side, because we already have an agreement there.
Well, I thought that was I thought on Chair Ed, you might, maybe your memory is better than mine. I thought through Central Milwaukee Bikeway Project, as Planning Commission recommended the route, we were, I will say, encouraged to not touch the Murphy site, just to not make it problematic for development purposes. So the idea is that you come out of Hillside at Meek, you cross the street to where the hospital is, and there is the 8 to 10 foot path. And then it goes down to the corner, and then, you know, the path continues, or maybe you go into a shared street environment. So that, I guess, would be what the money would be for. It would be purchase right of way, do it on the hospital side of the street, not on the Murphy side. But whenever Murphy develops, yeah.
Well, I think there's two things. Yeah. There's two things we can do to maybe keep ourselves from having to worry about these details is we can say east or west side as opportunities allow, something along those lines. That way we don't lock ourselves in. And then I want to go back and revisit that number because I think it's not accurate. Just looking at it, gut feeling says something went wrong there, and I want to change that. So I think we changed the description to say east or west side as opportunities allow, and I revisit that number. But I do think it does, your point is valid, is it really is part of that P32, 33, 34 bundle. And without it, you're missing a piece, so.
Is that a 6 foot sidewalk on the Providence side? I think it feels pretty wide, yeah.
Yeah, it's a much wider sidewalk than the rest of the corridor.
And we already have we have a crossing there. I'd be okay with taking this down. Or not promoting it, I guess.
I think the idea it stays just where it is, and just we get the number right and we get the description a little bit.
I think my idea was like, I felt like the TSP advisory committee missed it because there's 200 projects and this is part of that sequence and wanting it to be included. I think in many ways, I don't even know if I care what the project is. I just want us to like make sure we have the dollars to do whatever the engineers think is the best move to make at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gets elevated to the tune that we elevated 32, 33, and 34 because it is part of that sequence. And without it, you're just leaving a gap. But I do want to revisit the number to make sure it's accurate, and that will be the uncertainty going forward from tonight until I can figure it out in the morning.
I just think there could be a neat opportunity if you had a development go through that Meek property and actually use Llewellyn as a right away rate, and then you're crossing at a light instead of at a like RFB rate. Like we could, so there's just some synergy there. You're right. They haven't built since I've been here for 8 years. When are they gonna freaking develop, right? So
Yeah.
Totally see your point.
I love the idea of going through Murphy. It's so much, we debated a lot of this when we approved the plan.
Yeah,
There's a
it'd
lot
be
of,
pretty, it'd be
it's a
really
lot
neat
simpler.
connection. Yeah.
Are there objections to P75 being promoted to the tier 1 constrained list from the commission?
I was just going to say real quickly that it looks like potentially we show both sides. So maybe we had not made that decision yet in the concept plan.
East or west.
Yeah.
You know, the important thing is getting the crossing, you know, and making sure that the crossing goes to the correct, you know, place so you can get, you know, through or, you know, along, you know, the Murphy site, you know, when it develops. So, I mean, yeah, I think as long as the verbiage, the project description, you know, captures that we're trying to make that connection across 32nd and, you know, over to through or over to, you know, really 29, you know, is what it comes down to. You know, as long as the spirit of that is captured in this line item, I would want to promote this to the tier 1 constrained list. And I appreciate that we don't know the cost yet, and that's just going to be part of what council has to figure out later.
What's next?
But I think this is an important project.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
So I think there is consensus in the room. Everybody's on it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that might be it.
I believe as I looked through my list, I think that was everything. Yeah.
Well, can I just, I want to get this right, and we're on this topic. So if we're elevating P75 in recognition that it's part of the 32, 33, 34 bundle, almost feels like 62 needs to go with it, P62, because it is the crossing of 32nd at Meek. So if we were to put that in, that would be the way you get across 32nd. And so if you're only going to prioritize the corridor and not the crossing, that feels like a gap.
So P75 is the path along 32nd, and then P62 is the actual crossing.
Crossing, correct, yep. And that right now is sitting in tier 2 unconstrained on page 5 of the original list.
Yeah, you know, I heard what Jen said about wanting this to be, you know, possibly at a light instead of an RRFB, which makes sense. So as long as I think as long as the language in the description reflects flexibility about, you know, how we solve the problem, and that really we just, you know, identify that the problem is getting across 32nd at that, you know, to make that connection.
Yeah, could we rewrite that one? If you look at the description at P34, which is on the second page of Laura's document, you know, it talks about bike path, sidewalks, and then it talks about enhanced pedestrian crossing treatment. So maybe we could take, I apologize, I just forgot whatever number project we were just talking.
P34. Oh, sorry, it was P75 and P26.
Yeah, maybe we kind of take P75 and 62 and merge them together.
Yeah.
Get the number right, so it's the segment and the crossing.
I'm happy with that. I'm not opposed to keeping them separate. I'm not opposed to combining them. You know, as long as we're getting across the street.
I'd say we keep them separate just because you can put the connection in without P75 and you don't want to unnecessarily hamper yourself.
Yeah, and as soon as Hillside comes online, there might be a lot of people saying, hey, we want this to be a little safer. And
But I can revise the description to say enhanced pedestrian crossing treatment like you pointed out on P34, and that will get rid of the specificity behind the RRFB.
Okay.
Perfect. Are there any objections from the commission about that, team?
Nope.
Great. Any other comments? Did we miss anything? Anything else anyone wants to call out before?
Chair Edge, I think that, I mean, takes through the list that I had put together, both in terms of the ads and the cuts. I really want to thank all of my planning commission colleagues, as well as staff and consultant team, for kind of going on the journey there. I did have a question on P99. Nope, sorry, R27, which is, I think as Jen noted, changing speed zone signing on all local streets to 20 miles an hour. I wanted to note, I found myself in the crazy situation where I rode my bike down Lake Road recently. And I was reminding myself on that ride that there's sections of Lake Road that are signed for 40 miles an hour. There's also, I think, sections of Harmony that are signed for 40 miles an hour. I think railroads at 35, sections of Lake maybe at 35. So I know that we're talking about local streets here, but if we can maybe tweak, and I think we should to get that done, but I think there's a few other places that it would be great, maybe if, I don't know if that's its own project, if that's just the kind of thing y'all can do as part of your normal business operations, but
So the reason why the local streets in there is because we have to sign them, right? And they're not signed right now because it's automatic 25 miles per hour on local streets. So it's a huge cost to actually go through and sign all the local streets. However, we'd be looking at all streets. So all collectors and lower, we can do it as a city without going through the state. Our arterials will require us to do a speed study through the state in order to lower it, because we don't have a traffic engineer on in-house to run that study. You have to have a specialized person to do that. So we have to actually basically submit it to this ODOT and they do the study. So that's how we got Linwood dropped. I was hoping to look at King once the improvements came in.
Yep.
Lake Road we don't own all of Lake Road. So it's one of those maybe possible road transfers from the county. And then we could lower it because it shouldn't be 40. Like, totally agree.
So quick question on that, Jennifer. So as far as I know, Clackamas County does have a transportation engineer on staff and is able to do their own studies like that. Does that provide any opportunities for us to do something? No. Okay.
They have their own workload, so most likely we would have to still go outside of that.
is there a project
We
we
don't
could
do
put in
many.
here? I mean, we had a few studies, right? Could we put $200,000 for conduct
It's really not a cost, it's just a time, like you just have to fill out the paperwork to do it. So the cost is really associated with actually lowering the local
streets?
But
Okay.
I would say, once we get this passed, I'd be looking at the whole city.
Okay.
That's every project we come through, there's, 34th. We should lower that speed. Let's lower that speed. And then let's, what other measures should we be doing to actually have people going that speed and things like
And
that.
I think too, just to build on that, the good news is that Counselor Khosrowshahi and Counselor Anderson are bringing up this topic. We have the same night that we're going through the TSP projects, we're talking about speed limits.
Yeah.
So it's actually a separate agenda item on the council agenda. So I think that we'll be having this larger conversation
Yeah,
about
so
that.
it'll be more of a policy then, and then
Yeah.
then staff will start implementing that policy is what I'm envisioning.
Okay.
It'll happen. A lot of people have been asking and it's just been a lot of one-offs and I didn't want to do this street we're lowering, this street we're lowering. I wanted the TSB to bring us together and say, hey, no, the community has said we want to lower the speed limits and now let's put in a policy and what we want to see. And then implement it.
All right, well, I've not seen anything else in the room about any more discussion about any of the projects list.
Okay.
I-
Let's see. Then, Commissioner Thurman, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, I'm kind of curious in terms of how these changes might get reflected for council when things are coming up. I mean, there's a part of me that's interested in formalizing things and passing a motion just to have the gravitas of emotion behind it. But I don't know, as looking over to staff, if how
I mean,
much that
you could
matters.
pass the motion, but I think that really, I mean, ultimately, this is city council's
Sure.
decision. So I think that we will just clearly articulate to them that there was consensus on making these changes
Great.
and that's how we will package it up. So I don't know that a motion is necessary.
Okay.
You can come to the meeting.
Yeah, I'll certainly defer to my other commissioners on whether we think that a motion is necessary. There's hasn't been contentious discussion, so I don't know that we really need. I'm not sure that we need to formalize it. And I appreciate what Laura's saying, that these recommendations are are presented to City Council, but are just recommendations even with a motion. So. Anyway, I'll defer to my fellow commissioners on whether we think that's appropriate, but I would support a motion for a resolution of support if that was what everyone wanted to do.
Okay, I mean, we do have a consensus. I could go either way with the motion. Yeah, what do you think?
Well, and it's also, we don't have, it's not a formal, it's just
It's a work
session.
Yeah.
I'm fine with just recommending that we work through it all and we kind of came to an agreement. I don't know that it needs to be formalized. I mean, I would certainly not object to a formal thing, but I don't know that we need to.
We don't have a resolution ready or.
I do, but that's another. When is council though? Because I mean, maybe just coming to council is maybe a better.
Sure, it's on September 16th.
September 16th. Okay, great. Yeah, maybe we'll just plan that. We could also independently write our own letter if we wanted to. So.
Well, and we'll pitch it. We'll say, I mean, Planning Commission, this was, we had a long conversation, and I'm sure that if there are any questions, I know that some of the city councilors will go back and watch the Planning Commission meeting to kind of get an understanding of what the flavor was about the conversation. So that will also help.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you to our consultant team, and thank you to our in-house transportation team. Camilla, it was nice to meet you, and it's always great to see you, Jennifer. So thanks to everyone for all the effort that has gone into this. This has taken so long to get here. And I'm really glad to see that we're project list in hand. We're on our way to City Council with it, and getting closer to that adoption date. So thanks again to everybody for all of their effort moving this forward. It's been a phenomenal effort. So thanks again. And let's see. So now we're the Community Involvement Advisory Committee. At this point of the agenda, the Commission will act as the Community Involvement Advisory Committee. Do staff or CIAC members have any items to report?
I do not.
Okay. Do we have any audience members at this point?
We do not.
Okay. And we'll move on. Do planning commissioners have any other items for discussion?
I was just going to say, we kind of started informally the meeting. The city crews and contractors are out doing great road work around town, and just wanted to say thanks to staff for all the great work that you're doing. It's nice to see some transformational things. We were popping off a list of projects that we've all seen and experienced, and how excited people are. So just thanks again to the engineering department.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Thurman. So I think we're ready to move on to the forecast.
All right, and before we do that, I'll just say, since everybody's thanking everyone, thanks for digging in, you all, and thanks for sticking with us for a long time. We've been doing this for a long time, so thank you for continuing to work with us on this. It's been a journey. It's been good, so thank you. The forecaster, right now we don't have anything on the forecaster. I know, I'm not sure I've ever said those words before, so it feels really weird to say that. But that could change at any minute. We will be coming back. Right now, the only thing I know for sure is in November when we come with the draft TSP. But
what about the middle housing land division amendments?
That has turned out to be much more complicated, and we're basically waiting until it all gets codified and changed with the state. So right now, we are just referring to state statute in our notification because there's going to be more changes that are made. And so then once that has been, once those changes, we need to make those changes, we'll bring them back to you all.
Okay.
Yeah, that was on the agenda, but then we realized after everything that's been going on in the state legislature that we just needed to take a wait until it was definitive what we're going to do.
Okay. That makes sense.
And then
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, is there one last agenda saying is there any other business or news from me? Did we skip that part? Look at.
That was planning. Oh, yes. The question on the script was, do commissioners have any other items for discussion? It doesn't say does staff have any other items, but does staff have any other items for discussion?
Sorry, thank you, Chair Edge. Yeah, just as everybody, I think you all are aware that Julie Garvey has stepped down from the Planning Commission. She's moved out of Milwaukee. So we do have an alternate on deck that he will get appointed on September 16th, I believe, and then he will be ready to roll. He has got a mechanical engineering background and currently kind of sells stormwater products to other engineers. So he's really highly technical, but also has to talk to people in kind of lay language about a lot of things. And that's kind of how he talked about his bringing that experience to the Planning Commission. So I think he'll be a good addition. And so Mr. Steer will be joining us at our next Planning Commission meeting, whenever that may be.
And so, again, we're just kind of on hold until something comes up?
Yeah, until something else gets brought to the table.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that. We're at the point where I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll move to adjourn.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion before we go? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sounds unanimous. Have a great night, everybody.
Have a good night, Joseph.
Thank
Thank you, Chair.
Good night.